Hello. Wonderful. Second live today. And in a minute, Naina is coming in with me, and we're going to talk about Ayurveda and the mind. So, very, very interesting subject. So, it's obviously a broad one. So, we'll try to break it down and make this really useful for you so that it's information that you can take in and use in your daily life as well. Great, here she is. Hello.
Hello.
Did you find a quiet corner?
Well, I'm hoping it's going to stay relatively quiet here, but we'll do our best and see.
Great.
It's such a challenge to find a place that's like quiet. If I find a quiet place, then there will be some dog barking, there will be some animal making noises, some horns, like there's always something happening. But yeah, here I am, so we can do our best.
Great. Great to see you.
You too. How are you
Oh,
today?
good. A little slow. I don't know.
Yeah.
We were both saying like there's so much going on. And it's like one level, I feel like my body and mind is just kind of ready for hibernation mode, just like feeling very cozy and kind of slow. Yeah. So just
Yeah.
taking it one thing after another and yeah,
Nice.
not
Nice and
getting
paced.
overwhelmed.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Mm.
feel like a lot's happening too, actually. I think the last time we had a live, I said the same thing, but there seems to be
Mm.
this upsurge in like a lot of activity and things happening.
Mm.
So now's the time to pace ourselves and really put to practice a lot of these things that we talk about.
Yes.
I
Yes.
hope.
That's the times, right? When it really comes to
Yeah.
test, because I mean, why are we learning about all of these things? Why are we meditating? Why are we studying? Why are we taking in all this information if we're not going to use it when we need it, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly. It's
just
got to be put
just
into practice.
yeah, and otherwise it's just feeding the ego, like feeling good about having lots of knowledge. But if it's not making us kinder people and making our life
Yeah.
richer, then yeah.
That's really I'm just going to switch the camera because I think it's going to be better that the view is this way. Then you might see the Ganga. Um yeah, I was just talking to Swami here and he was telling about how like there's certain yogic and Ayurvedic knowledge that's there and it's like telling someone about jaggery, but then there's a whole other experience in actually tasting it.
Mm,
So there's a whole other experience in applying and integrating
mm.
these this knowledge to get a different type of understanding and learning from it. So yeah, like when the time actually comes in our moments of more challenge, that is the time to like really put to practice a lot of these things to really taste the effect of it.
Yeah. And also not get hard on yourself about it, because I've definitely gone there too, like, oh my God, I should know better. I have I know all of these things, why can't I apply? And
Yeah,
so to like
definitely.
stay gentle, but gentle and kind,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
utilize it.
Or the other day I did a class, and after I did a class about the daily routine, one student just asks, "So do you do all of this?" And I just directly said, "No, I don't. Like, I don't think that we do all of this stuff that we talk about. It's still a learning process for us to implement it and to do it all, because we're forever students of these sciences. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have like a shorter routine that I do every day, no matter what. Always happens. And then
Yeah,
when there's more time, then it's like an hour yoga and like exercise before and yoga and like lots of different little steps. But I think
absolutely.
that works pretty well for me to be more realistic about like what can I do every day, and
Mm.
what do I do when I have that extra time.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And on being adaptable.
Mm.
you know? So like, okay, if there's no time for it, it's okay. The world's not going to end.
Mm.
You can do certain things. And I think this comes from knowing the principles behind what you're doing, you know, and that's when we learn the why. Why
Mm.
do I oil my feet in the evening? Because then once you know why, then you can easily apply it when it's needed,
Yes.
rather than doing it mechanically. Like I
Yes.
think nowadays, meaning is just being brought into everything.
Mm.
And once we have meaning and understanding, then it becomes almost like it brings it to life and we can use it more properly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
So, shall we move on to our topic?
I feel like we're talking about it already. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like everything's connected to the mind, right? On different levels. But yeah, let's go into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we kind of decided on this topic quite quickly, wasn't it?
Mm.
I was quite inspired because I recently did a workshop on it. So I thought, yeah, let's chat a little bit about this aspect. And it is an aspect that always interests people,
Mm.
the mental parts. So
Yeah.
yeah.
What was it in the workshop that inspired you?
So basically, it was for yoga students.
Mm-hmm.
So it's for Ayurveda for yoga students, and I thought, okay, what would be useful for them to know about? And I think if you're working with yoga for people, obviously you're going to be working towards healing the mind,
Mm.
because that is the whole science of it. So where does Ayurveda kind of fit into that? Obviously, the physical and the mental body are one.
Mm.
So that's where Ayurveda helps. But also, there's an understanding that the five elements are part of matter, and so is the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So the five elements cannot be separated from the workings of the mind either. Like the elements will be influencing us on a mental level too, which
Right.
means the doshas do have an influence on our mind, and certain doshic constitutions will have certain tendencies. And what I noticed in this workshop that I was giving was that for teachers that are teaching yoga, there will be certain yamas and niyamas that will be more relatable to different psychological profiles of the doshas. And then you marry that and cross it over with the gunas of sattva, rajas, and tamas, and you've got this whole kind of world of like mixtures of vata and tamas, rajas and pitta, like, and there's all these different kind of crossovers of psychological profiles. And you can really see that there are certain yogic paths that will be more beneficial per
Mm.
doshic type. Like karma yoga might be a more beneficial path for certain doshas, or the jnana yoga path might be more beneficial for a pitta type of
Mm.
person, you know? So, you know, all of
Yes.
these yogic paths are ways to realize or, you know, learn about that union. And our doshic profile will help us in terms of knowing what psychological things we might need to work on.
Mm.
So there is this really beautiful kind of blend where we can understand that. So maybe we can, yeah, I can share a little bit about the doshic profiles and kind of what yama and niyama might be useful as an
Yeah.
example. That might
Yeah,
be.
let's dive into it.
Um, so in
So
terms
for
of,
so for those of you who don't know, like yamas and niyamas are yogic principles of living, basically. So when we say yoga, there's actually 8 parts to yoga, and only one of them is the yoga asana, so the physical postures. So a lot of people don't know this. If we just go to the gym and do yoga, we're like, oh, this is yoga. Like, it's so much more. So yeah.
yeah, and they're a really, really interesting part. I mean, Dr. Frawley talks about how they are basically what you need to follow to heal the mind when you're
Mm.
working with Ayurveda. So they are really important to start looking at. And yeah, I mean, so when we're talking about the mind in Ayurveda, obviously you've got the doshic profiles. You've
Mm-hmm.
got Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, but you've also got to think about the gunas, Sattva,
Mm.
Rajas, and Tamas.
Mm-hmm.
So for each of the doshas, there will be Rajasic, Tamasic, and Sattvic psychological tendencies. So when a Vata person is more Sattvic, that is like the better qualities of the Vata personality. When a Vata psychology is in its Tamasic mode, then it's probably expressing itself more negatively. So being aware of that is really helpful, and it is helpful to just understand that we should always try to move towards sattva, which is basically the better version of yourself. So we have to keep that in mind. So there is these two kind of things happening. You've got the doshas and then you've got the gunas as well. So like for a Vata psychology, most people would understand Vata to be kind of on a positive note, very cheerful, bubbly, moving, loving, socializing, ideas, and its full flow of creativity.
Flexible,
adaptable, yeah. But then on a more kind of tamasic aspect, they can be very prone to addictions. They can go into deep states of anxiety, sometimes not leaving the house, very, very, very fearful, like phobias, too much kind of nervous tension in the body, and very erratic and ungrounded, and
distracted, like having thousands of different projects going on, never really finishing anything.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably more in the Rajas.
True.
Where it hasn't gone that as much. Yeah.
True. Yeah.
But so I mean, I think it's good to recognize this spectrum, to have this understanding, because the journey is from moving from tamas to rajas, and then once being rajasic is not the worst thing in the world, because it shows there is some kind of movement there. It's just when we move into a more sattvic quality, we become more decisive about where to channel that energy. And knowing our good qualities and putting energy into those things. And that's when you can really flower and, bring out really good qualities that are unique to us. So that's what's so wonderful about it. So that's the Vata kind of dosha. And then you've got the Pitta one, which we can probably guess. What would you say is the positive aspects of Pitta psychology?
Psychologically, very driven, like motivated, very quite like a sharp mind, like decisive, forward moving,
focused.
Like a good leader, often, and good communicator.
Very, because intellect is very strong, isn't it? Yeah, like the fire element.
Yeah, and also able to assert, able to assess when there's rest needed as well, right? So it's quite a balanced way of using the energy. Actually, like a Pitta person usually doesn't burn out, actually, because they can tell, like, okay, I've done enough work, like they're like organized and structured.
You're right. It's more the Pitta Vata type of psychology that would burn out, right? Because they're driven by so much movement and that heat as well. It's okay.
I'll be right back. Keep talking.
So that's the Pitta psychology, because their intellect is very strong. But when that moves into a more negative aspect, what's going to happen? Manipulation, anger, hatred, jealousy, these types of things will start to develop. And I think that's more kind of in the tamasic mode that will start to develop. Very strong indulgence in pleasures and desires, a little bit materialistic. But in the Rajasic mode, they can be a little bit manipulative in that stage as well, and a bit kind of competitive and ambitious, I would say.
Sorry about that. Okay. My neighbor forgot her key.
Oh. Yeah, we were just talking about the spectrum of the Pitta psychology.
Great.
So yeah, like I would say when it moves into a lot of ambition, competition, getting a little bit, you know, ruthless in the pursuit, a little bit manipulative, then it's going into rajas, and then tamasic is kind of the stronger states of like anger, hate, and those more really, you know, directing that fire into that kind of place. That'll be more on the tamasic level. And then we've got the kapha dosha, which was the most interesting one actually, because we always associate kapha dosha with like kindness and loyalty and softness and patience, like a nurturing kind of quality. When it actually goes into rajas and tamas, there's greed that comes with that, and
Yes.
lust as well. Lust and greed and manipulation is
Attachment.
also there. Attachment,
Yeah.
yeah, that was the other one. Yeah, like
Yeah.
kind of attachment and what was the
Kind
word?
of hoarding as well,
Hoarding,
like
yeah,
overconsumption and just like, yeah,
exactly. And that's what really
difficulty.
reminded me of asteya,
Mm,
like not, or aparigraha, like not accumulating more than what you need, or
mm,
not taking from others as much. Like this kind of learning or practicing that kind of principle would be really helpful for someone in that kapha kind of mindset. So
yeah.
yeah, in the workshop I was talking about how you can integrate these things into, you know, the classes as philosophy per
Mm,
dosha. So
yeah.
it was a really interesting.
I think, speaking of parigraha and like hoarding, and so, I think a beautiful perspective on it is also how we use others' time, like how we, other people's time, that we like use our words wisely, to not like waste someone's time, or like, just keep like chatting on and on and on and on about something that, you could say in a shorter way, or not
Yes.
checking in with if someone is busy, if someone say, oh, I have to go, just keep talking at them. Things like that can also be
Right.
this like clinging to
Absolutely.
someone. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love that practice of asteya. That was like such a huge eye opener for me. I don't know about you,
Mm.
Lisa,
Yeah.
when you learned that, like to realize that, and you start to see it once you know it.
Yeah.
You start to see it like, this is taking my time. It's okay, like you have patience to listen, but we should always like be aware that that's
Mm.
someone's time that
Yeah.
we're taking, and it's not being given to us. We're
Yeah.
just kind of taking it without asking.
Yeah. And then
Uh,
of course it's also up to the person to set boundaries, right? And to be like, make sure that they
yeah,
also take care of their time and not giving it away, or not just like,
exactly.
so it goes both way, right? There's not a
Yeah,
victim and a perpetrator, but both people taking
exactly.
responsibility for it. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I mean, another classic one was ahimsa with violence,
Mm,
which I think is for the Vata psychology, maybe more practicing of non-violence on yourself,
mm,
that your inner dialogue, probably.
right.
I mean, for all doshic profiles as well, but ahimsa outwardly maybe more for a pitta type,
Yeah.
you know, in the tamasic mode.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is also an antidote to the pitta energy.
Yeah.
Sorry, someone's just seen me, and I've just had to be so rude and be like, I'm on a live. Oh gosh.
Someone asked in the comments, can you talk about Ayurveda and burnout mind? It's an interesting perspective too.
Hmm. How would you like to start that off, Lisa?
I mean, I'm thinking like a little bit what we said earlier, right? With that, it's a pitta person wouldn't burn out in the same way. I would say like a burnout is mostly a vata imbalance in the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So overdoing, and like, as we spoke earlier today too, like this feeling that there's so much to do, and an inability to focus your attention on the task that you're at
Yes.
right in that moment.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think it's like a combination of like feeling overwhelmed, having too much to do, and then an inability to decide and to be present with what we're at. Because I think often what happens is it's like you're doing one thing, and then in your mind you're like, oh, but I need to do this too. So you're splitting your attention,
Yeah.
and you're kind of burning your mind out. Like your capacity is just spread all over the place, and there's
Yeah.
no focus.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I love that. It's so much is about deciding
yeah,
where to put your energy, isn't it? And then
yeah,
once you're more decided in that, there's a certain level of acceptance of letting certain tasks go
yeah,
and being like, it's just not possible. This is going to happen today. And that might mean having to say no to someone. It
yeah,
might mean having to have an awkward conversation and canceling something.
yeah.
You know, I think one thing to always ask about ourselves when we're going through or feel like we might be going through a burnout is what's driving the activity underneath?
Mm,
Like, what's pushing us to do so many things? And
mm,
is it really purposeful? Like, is it really aligned with what I want to do? Or is there some other, like, what's guiding it? Is it love or fear?
mm.
One teacher once in her video said, and this always stayed with me, if you're doing anything with or have some kind of urgency behind it and you have this urgent feeling, it's probably not rooted in truth.
Mm.
Like if you can handle something calmly and paced and be really honest and it seems to go smoothly, you can feel that it's rooted in more truth. But if there's a lot of rush, and you're trying to get something done and there's like a feeling of urgency,
Yeah.
it's something else a little bit more stronger is kind of driving that. And
Yeah,
that
I've
might be
heard like
time
this.
to let it go.
Yes, beautiful. I've heard like a similar, like a version of that. It's like nothing that needs to happen this red hot minute is God's will.
Oh, wow.
So similar, like, when we were like, oh my God, I need to, like, where there's this urgency and this stress. It's like, no, like
Yeah.
nature doesn't stress. Like,
No.
and like there's no rush. Like I don't think any flower is like, oh my God, I need to bloom, it just happens
Yeah,
in flow. And when we can tune into that and live from that place as well, then life is easy and smooth and natural, and
exactly.
decisions happen, when it's time, and there's no,
Yeah.
yeah.
No
So
pressure, isn't it? And there's so many aspects to this as well. I think Sister Shivani does one talk and she also says, like, when you're in those moments, and works like magic, don't ever, I don't know if I mentioned it in this live or another one, like, don't ever say, I'm busy. I'm so busy. And I do it all the time, so I can't even talk like from experience, but this is her advice, and it does work when I remember it.
yeah.
But when you feel overwhelmed and like there's so many things to do, just literally say there's plenty of time. Or if you're in a rush somewhere and you've got to get somewhere within like 10 minutes, just go at your own pace. There's plenty of time.
Mm,
Just keep repeating that I have lots of time. Everything's flowing properly. And there is some kind of magic in it. I'm not
mm.
quite sure the science behind it, but it does work. Like you do
Yeah.
seem to arrive earlier.
Yeah.
Um, to
I think it's like that balance between like respecting other people's time and to not be late, to not like,
Oh
but then
yeah,
also like trusting the flow of life. Because like
exactly.
often like the times I end up being late for something, I run into someone and like I meet them like right as I cross the train station, and like I wouldn't have run, there's like all these little magic moments that happen. Like, oh, like
Yeah,
what if I would have left like 5 minutes earlier? This wouldn't happen. And so
yeah,
like being in that flow and trusting that in life, that or I'm late and then the train is late too, or the other person is late as well, and it just
yeah,
kind of flows.
yeah.
um yeah.
It does. Like it opens the door to possibility and magic, like you say, doesn't it? And
Hmm.
then upon reflection, you're like, yeah, like you say, if you look back, you'll be like, oh, that wouldn't have happened if, yeah, any other way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think there's so many facets to burnout and Ayurveda. One thing I think what we are actually talking about is it's a little bit going more to the root level than, oh, you can do this practice when you feel burnt out. You can take this supplement. You can use this oil. Like all of that information is useful, but it doesn't get to the root cause of why are we going to burnout. That's the real question we need to ask ourselves. And let's not forget the true purpose of Ayurveda is to be able to live your life efficiently and for the reason of why you came here. So, really honing into knowing what you want to do, being decisive in what you're doing, and choosing your tasks carefully that align with what you want to do should ultimately not lead you to a burnout. And if you're getting to the level of burnout, it's time to change. It's not time to accommodate the burnout. It's time to say, okay, what's happening here? And reorganize yourself. The whole point of Ayurveda is to live a long, healthy life. It's not to, become something really as such that we might be chasing.
Yeah.
It's much more quiet than that, I think,
Yeah. Simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's so easy, if you're not in touch with these practices, you're not in touch with yourself, you're just like living in a big city. I've been there myself. Like, it's so easy to get into that flow of life and just think that it's normal to live from that place of like rush and stress and
Oh,
everyone's
absolutely.
just kind of coping, there is, and it's hard to like go from that place to make different choices and to say no to things, and like it can feel like it's a little death, right? You're like giving up a life, you're giving up maybe friendships, maybe a job, maybe an identity. So to come around to that and realize like, okay, I am not those things, I'm something more. And there, but it can be so confusing, and like being in that middle place, where you haven't found really how you want to live, but you're also okay, I'm leaving something behind, and
I'm going to share something that's just, it's so crazy lately. Like, as I go from situation to situation, what someone says is linked to something I was just reading before. And you've just said something that I was like, oh my gosh, she's explaining like exactly what I was reading earlier. I'm researching about Agnihotra, which Lisa, you know a lot about. And it was really interesting because this one paper was talking about there are certain geographical locations that have a higher stress level, like in the actual earth, so that it's not as aligned. So what this does, it has a really big impact on your energy pattern of your body. So if you're living in a city, that dissonance, like that disequilibrium, it's called, is there in your environment, and that doesn't help your body to be in a state of alignment. It kind of disturbs your flow of prana through your body. And so what Agnihotra does, and it was so fascinating, I was reading this paper about it, is that performing yajna, or performing that particular fire ceremony, puts your cells back into a certain vibratory state to counterbalance that pranic disturbance that might be in the environment. I mean, as well as doing it to the body, it also does it to the environment around you. But that's what it basically does. Like, it resets the vibration into something that's harmonious and equilibrious. And that's how it heals, both inside and outside. And that just reminded me exactly what you're saying about living in a city. Like, the energy of certain geographical locations will benefit so much from something like Agnihotra, to do that regularly. Because to reset your system at sunrise and sunset, like, you're putting your body, it gives a chance for your body to correct energetic imbalances and to create that structure, so we can really start to counterbalance that feeling that we have, in those kinds of environments. Because when we're on holiday, when we're in quiet places, we don't get that sensation of rush, and then we start to feel healthy and good. But then how do we do it in areas where that stress is there? You know, so energetically, this is how something like Agnihotra can be so beneficial
Yeah.
to bring the system back.
It makes so much sense. Oh my God, I was just in Paris over the weekend to visit friends, and they live a little bit south of the city, like close to actually the first national park of Europe. I didn't know this.
Oh,
Amazing place, amazing energy. Like, and I like after just half an hour walking in the forest, I could feel how my whole body, I was just like so rejuvenated, just like breathing fresh air. There was this amazing rocks. They looked like dinosaur skin. They had like these bubbles. You can really see that this had been
wow.
underwater. It's amazing.
Wow.
Like feeling so refreshed. I was like, oh, this is what I've been missing this fall, because I've been in Hamburg a lot and like in a city, and it's beautiful. It's green. I'm close to the water and the river, but it's man-made. You know, there's boats. It's this vibration of the harbor too, and like a part of me loves it. You know, it's really interesting. But like my
Mm.
body was really missing this like soothing, quiet nature. No man-made sounds, no airplanes, no boats, no cars. Like, and that makes a lot of sense that it's, yeah, that's probably an area too that doesn't have this level of stress, right? And
Yes.
it's incredible.
Yes.
It's,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It does. I mean, one teacher also said about those places, like you mentioned, that the reason we feel like that in nature is because nature is balanced.
Mm,
And so when we move into an environment that's balanced, we kind of start to pick up on that sensation, and then we feel much better. So we'll be surprised how much our environment affects us energetically.
I
It's
wonder too, like sound bowls must have a similar effect, right? Because it's the vibration of the sound that is
yes,
affecting the
yes,
body so strongly. So that must
yes,
also make sense that it's like has such an upswing, and like everyone's offering
yes,
sound journeys in some way, and like
yes,
beautiful, and it's very soothing and relaxing, and
yes.
so it
This is
makes,
all the journey back to pranic healing.
yeah.
Like we're fine, like prana is just coming back, and it's just making its appearance now as the ultimate thing that we need to heal
Mm,
and to balance that prana. And that's what sound healing will do. You know,
mm,
it's connecting to our prana, our cells, the vibratory level, and rebalancing that.
mm,
And in, you know, so many diseases are from the pranic body. We don't even know because the pranic body is not understood in our
mm.
modern medical system. But like I was talking to you, I spoke with one Ayurvedic doctor recently, and he was a wonderful, really, really knowledgeable doctor. And he was talking to another person saying hello. This is like Indian life. Um, and he was saying that I asked him, what do we suggest to people with autoimmune disorders? Like, what's the best advice we can give Ayurvedically? And he said, autoimmune disorders at their root are in the pranic level. So pranic healing is going to be the best way to get to the bottom of the autoimmune cause. Like, there's definitely a lot you can do physically, but he says that they'll take medicine, do all the treatments, but it's probably going to come back.
Mm,
So to really treat autoimmune disorders, something on the pranic and the mental level has to be done.
mm.
Pranic and mental healing, and that's sound healing, sound bowls, that's Shirodhara, that's pranayama practices, that's, you know, anything to do with the mental and the pranamaya kosha.
And
Manamaya kosha and
also,
pranamaya kosha.
yeah, also, you know, what we consume, right? Like fresh foods that is rich in
Yes,
prana, like fresh
yes,
air, like nature, that will also be
exactly. Yeah,
affecting
yeah.
the
So
prana
prana,
body.
there's an external source, and obviously that prana it's going to be disturbed, and it's going to be less in these city environments where the pollution is strong and
Mm,
our water supply is not completely clear. You know, the soil level, the nutrition level of the soil is not strong.
mm,
So our entire food chain's a little bit compromised, you know,
mm,
so we can't even expect to get that much prana on that level.
mm,
Um, and then something like Agnihotra as a practice, we actually take solar energy.
mm.
so which is different from prana.
Mm.
There's a difference between them. So that's why Agnihotra is so healing, because we capture solar energy, which will be useful for our healing. So yeah, everything is moving into more subtle things, and it's going to be a challenge to try and communicate these things, and for even to us to understand it, because our brains are so wired to understand something. If I can see and touch it,
Yeah.
then it's real. Whereas like prana and the mind, we're just working with these things that are like, we can't see and touch it. So healing it is a very subtle science. It's going to be an interesting journey, I think, over the next years, how it all develops and gets shared.
Yeah.
So hopefully we will start a little bit of that on our retreat.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Where we'll be working a little bit with the mind.
Yes. Yes. I mean, yeah. And I think sometimes I remember Dr. Arbor Svarboda was talking about this in some of his books, like how it's often easier to start with the body, to balance the body, to work with food and lifestyle changes and, balancing that. And then the mind follows. Mind is really stubborn, it's hard to change your mind. Like,
This is true.
I understand that people go to psychedelics and more like extreme things because the mind, if you have compulsive thoughts and you're like, it's hard to break,
It's
right? It's
hard.
like
It is.
meditating it's challenging if you're not, if you're not practiced in it.
Yeah.
But we can do so much, like just like we talked about in the beginning, like when the doshas are balanced. If we work with like food and lifestyle and the doshas are imbalanced, then the mind is going to follow. It will be easier to balance it.
Exactly. Like that, I think the Panchakarma retreat will be just such a perfect prime opportunity to do the healing on a physical level and look at the mental aspect. Like to do those together is such an opportunity, I think. Whereas, if we just did the physical level, I mean, the mind would follow, definitely. But there's got to be some knowledge underneath with the mind, some kind of affirmation or some kind of like sprinkling of spiritual inspiration. So when you go back home and you notice certain tendencies coming up, you have a little bit of something to stop it from flowering into the mind.
Yeah, because the mind is trying to solve problems, right? So then we need to give it some guidance, right? So that it has something to work with. So it's not just there.
This is all about like looking at the diet that we feed our mind. This is so important. Oh my goodness. Like as much as we look at the diet of what we eat, we have to look at the diet that we put in our mind.
Yes.
Like what are we putting into our body on a sensory level?
Yeah.
What information are we putting in?
Yes. Yeah, and we forget that. Like
every time I go to my phone and
No, go on.
Oh, yeah. I think there's a delay. Are we back?
Yes.
Yeah.
You go.
Yeah. Okay. I think there was a delay. I forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah, I was just saying that those moments where you mindlessly pick up your phone, and it might be like evening time, and there's so many better things that you could be doing, but suddenly your thumb goes to Instagram, and I'm scrolling through, and it's only now like I still have to do it now. I'm like, gosh, like what? Like in a way, it's so useless. There's so much useless stuff that is there in our social media. There's useful things for sure, but there's also knowing when to consume it, isn't it? Like, I think our social media and our phones are a bit like a buffet. It's a bit like a buffet restaurant where everything's so available, so much, and we're just feeding so much into our mind, we can't digest it. And then we wonder why we feel tired when we wake up. We wonder why we can't think clearly. And there's all these other things happening, like there's just got to be a little bit of moderation and control of what we feed our mind.
For sure. Yeah. And like, if you sit in front of the phone or in front of the TV when you eat, you're not like the food and what you see, what you hear, what you feel. Like, it's all part of the experience. You're taking it all in, and so I don't think we'd understand that really.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
and it's so
Yeah,
tempting, right? To like to keep have the phone there, to have input, and to. But I wonder if we learn to just like sit with our stuff without having so much distraction covering
I
up, you
know.
know, and you know that would be very healing.
God.
Speaking of distractions.
One of
uh,
the Kriya yoga masters, Master Sri Yukteswar, he used to say to Yogananda, um, just learn how to behave.
mm,
And I remember just listening to that, like, that's so true. Like, it's so difficult. Just we all know what we have to do.
mm,
But it's the hardest thing is like, just behave yourself.
mm.
But then there is this rebellion inside you that's like, and
I think
that's the challenge, isn't it?
it's almost like reparenting yourself, you know. It's like
Yeah.
connecting to that inner child part of you, like that part of you that's like, no, I can eat whatever I want, I can stay up late if I want. It's like befriending her or him or them,
Yeah.
and like being like, yeah, I know that you want to stay up and scroll on Instagram, but we have to sleep, we're getting up early, you know. And like like
Yeah.
be loving to yourself and around that. And
It's
yeah.
such a journey. It's such a journey. I mean, I would say like it's got to be done in small steps
Mm,
and be really real and honest with yourself about what we can do, you know.
yes.
Just take small steps at a time. Like you gave a good example of the way we eat.
Mm,
Just maybe just turn the TV off. Just try.
mm.
Or, you know, put the phone away when you're eating and just see what happens. Like do really small things to
Yeah,
try to have
it's
that.
it's a really beautiful opportunity to become aware of what's going on in the mind when we do that, when we
It
like create
is.
those pauses, right? It's the same in yoga class, right? If you've ever nowadays a lot of yoga classes have music in them, which is beautiful, but also going to a yoga class without music, you know, and or like just sitting meditating without any guidance, and like just making room for that silence, and like making room for boredom actually as well.
Yes,
Because like we need that time to process everything that we take in through our senses. We're
exactly.
always eating, we're always breathing in, we're never breathing out, you know. We're never,
Hmm.
there's no room for creativity, there's no room for new ideas to come up, because we're always consuming, and there's
Yes,
no, yeah, there's no pause. It's super
exactly.
important.
Yeah, it's like the Bhagavad Gita, what it says about when you're consuming food, and Ayurveda as well. Like, is it one third food of your stomach should be full,
Mm.
one third with water? No, I've forgotten the portions now. There should be space left,
Space
basically.
for gases and for
Yes,
needing like this
yes.
movement to take
I
place.
forgot the
Yeah.
exact proportions, but yeah, basically the teaching is that leave some space.
Mm.
Leave some space. Like space is necessary in our stomach for physical digestion. So what makes us think that space is not necessary for healing of our mind?
Mm.
And that's interesting what you just said. That's what we fear the most. We fear the most space. We fear quietness. We fear boredom. We fear, you know, not doing anything. I remember learning this from Claudia Welch's courses, Dr. Claudia Welch with Robert Svoboda. They did an amazing course about women's health.
Mm.
And that's the key thing she would say, like rest, like just be comfortable in doing nothing. And it's one of the
Yes.
hardest things to do is to do
Yes.
nothing. But I think that's what initiates this process, you know, that space element.
Yes.
It initiates so much.
And especially as women, you know, because they, I mean, it's beautiful that there's like such a, you know, so many strong women, and we're working and we're having children and we're doing it all. And it's like, that's beautiful
Yeah.
and empowering and all of that. but to also learn to know, like, when is there time to act and when is there time to just rest, and like to also allow yourself to be held and to like ask for help and do nothing
Exactly.
and like just lay. And like I think there can be so much guilt associated with resting, like that there's, oh, you're not productive, you're not getting things done, you're not learning, oh, you're just lying there doing like. But
Yeah,
that is so important. We
it
forget
is.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what creates the balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, and it's the importance is there. What I find most interesting is why we don't do it.
Yeah.
What is it that we're afraid of?
Mm.
Um, and I suppose it does. It's helpful when you start to feel more comfortable or sure in what you're doing in life.
Mm.
I think once you found that, rest and space is not really an issue.
Sure.
I don't know if your experience, that's what I found. Like when I'm
Yeah.
doing something that I feel like, no, this is what I'm happy doing, I'm comfortable doing it, finding a good rhythm with it. When there's space there, I'm totally fine with it.
Mm. True. Yeah, and also, yeah, like when you're in balance in your relationships too, right? When you feel good and safe at home, and when you're able to rest there, and
Yes,
um, so there, yeah, yeah, true.
exactly.
Because then there's a natural. I think so many people also feel like they don't get the things done that they want to get done. And then it's hard to rest because there's always this like, oh, I could have done more. I haven't like, so also like find some
Mm,
acceptance in like, okay, I've achieved the things I wanted to, and like,
mm,
and then there's time for rest, like that there both gets to coexist, and that it's not
yeah,
that we're not always in this like, oh my God, I could do more, I could learn more, I could study more, I could like.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
Another really interesting thing is like, when you are doing something that you feel aligned to or you feel satisfied with, you don't
Mm.
get as tired.
That's true. It gives you
So
energy.
yeah, so like rest is not even, I mean, it's necessary, but it's not so different from your activity.
Mm. True.
And you know, and I think there are times like that where we might be doing a certain job or with a certain person and it doesn't take our energy.
Mm.
And I think that's yoga, right?
Mm.
To be in action and not be attached or have any kind of any pleasures involved in the activity,
Mm.
to just be a vehicle for it without any identification with what you're doing, and that's in that way.
Mm.
And then there's not so much energy loss
Mm.
as well. It's like karma yoga, isn't it? That's the aim of
Mm-hmm.
karma yoga. To be able to do your activity like selflessly, seeing it as service, and feeling that something's working through you. I mean, this is going a bit esoteric now, but
Yeah.
that I mean, that's it. That's the essence of it, isn't it? Like to feel that something is working through you, so you don't feel like you are there. I don't know, but yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. True. That, yeah, being in service and like not with not so much focus on me and like
Yeah,
the I, but like something greater, and yeah,
yeah,
that
and
gets to
that's
come
definitely a
through.
journey to go on. I don't think you can just do that overnight. Be like, oh, suddenly I'm just going to do like that. That's definitely a journey, but I think that's the kind of what we want to aim towards.
Mm.
We don't, I mean, making our lifestyle and our activity not something that we necessarily need rest from,
Mm.
although it should be an integral part. But to make our life harmonious in our activity too.
Yeah. Yeah, and not just live for the weekend or for the vacation,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it flows together, and yeah.
Yeah. You
Mm.
don't even notice if it's weekday, weekend, if you're working, if you're with friends. Like you don't notice because you're the same kind of state throughout all of it.
Mm.
Obviously, there'll be different levels of output
Mm.
that you'll be giving, but generally trying to stay steady throughout everything that you do. And that's like a way to keep energy efficiency, right? It's a way to use your energy efficiently, so you're not wasting it and
Absolutely.
giving away.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
Is there
My
anything?
batteries. Oh,
Yeah. No, I feel like is there? I feel like we've covered a lot. Is there anything else we want to round up with? Or
uh, yeah. I mean, I think talking about Ayurveda and the mind is always tricky because it's so subtle and it's so varied and vast. It's kind of difficult to make it very structured. But
yes,
I hope that we touched upon a few things that are interesting
yes.
for people that are taking this journey.
We haven't mentioned the word buddhi at all. We talked a
Oh, I
little bit
love this
earlier
topic.
about like Mahad and buddhi. So like the buddhi is like our higher intellect and the
Yeah.
mind.
Oh, I love learning about the Buddhi. Like, yeah, so for those that have studied Ayurveda, you'll be familiar with this diagram. It's in Dr. Ladd's book, The Journey of Consciousness to Matter. And it's basically a diagram of Sankhya philosophy in a very beautiful way. And that's a philosophy of creation, as per Ayurveda. So what we can understand from that is how did we come into physical form? And that map, that diagram shows that the buddhi is the first thing that develops, right? After consciousness and matter join together, it's the buddhi, which is this higher intelligence. We mustn't mistake that with intellect.
Mm.
This is not what we learn at school. This is not what we read in a book. This is an intelligence that is almost cosmic.
Mm.
Like, I like to understand it as discrimination,
Mm.
Viveka. Discrimination quality,
Mm.
understanding truth from false.
Mm.
And that buddhi can only awaken in the light of sattva.
Mm.
So that's why going towards sattvic qualities, sattvic living in whatever capacity we can. You don't have to go full pelt like, oh, I'm living so sattvic and everything's so spiritual and perfect. It's like, no, you just do it at your own pace and slowly, slowly try to integrate certain sattvic qualities. You are heading towards awakening your buddhi. And that light of that sattvic living will give you that discrimination quality. And then once you've got that discrimination quality, you start to see truth. And then you will know appropriate action. You will know what to do to follow your path. You will feel inside what is right, what is wrong.
Mm.
You're kind of led by a higher intelligence. You're not led by what someone's told you is right or wrong.
Mm.
You should do this, you shouldn't do that. No, your higher intelligence, your buddhi has awakened. So you know yourself, what is true from what is false. So buddhi is such a beautiful thing, which we all have. It's all there already. It just needs to be awakened. We need to remove the inertia, like the tamas, and allow that buddhi to be awakened for us to see the truth.
Yes.
It's very, very lovely. Yeah. What did you learn a different perspective on buddhi? I mean, that's only my understanding of it.
No, I like that. I think that's a nice way of looking at it. Yeah, I like the description that it's the things we came into this life knowing already, like the things that we didn't learn in school, that our parents didn't teach us. It's like the things that we know in our heart that are just clear for
Yeah,
us.
exactly.
So yeah, maybe something, I don't know if you believe in that, coming from different lives, or if it's just, yeah, something that is just integrated in us, that just, it's just like, this is what I think and what I know and what I, yeah.
Yeah. It's a
That's,
bit like, would you say intuition?
yeah, yeah, maybe
Isn't it?
intuition,
It
yeah, for
is. It
sure.
is. It's intuitive sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, all of these concepts are, I mean, it takes years and lifetimes to study them, I think, because you've also got prajna
Mm.
there as well, which is like also a certain wisdom and intelligence, isn't it? So Maybe we would need like a teacher or a hired teacher to explain the difference between these things. But maybe prajna is also a concept more familiar with those that study Ayurveda, in that it's this inherent intelligence running through our body. And then you've also got this buddhi, which is like the higher intelligence of discrimination quality. So there's all these aspects to ourselves that we just have no idea about. And even just the intellectual words is not, I don't think it's even enough for us to realize it. You know, like we are just literally touching something like this. So there's just so much more to come, and there's so much more to this human life. I was talking to Swami this morning about how he says, you don't know how lucky we are to take a human life, how lucky you have the opportunity to be a human, to be able to expand your consciousness, and actually you're in this plane, this earth plane, to do that work. So when you come to that realization, don't delay. Like do what's, and that doesn't mean you have to take a spiritual path. Like you can still do everything else, but you just know why you're doing it, you know, that you really value. I would love to talk about that program one day.
Yes, maybe at the retreat in India.
Yeah. I mean, I always used to describe it. I remember when we did the work for Ether, I did a nice video about describing how it's like a map of where we're going. Like to realize ourselves as consciousness, and we're like recognizing ourselves through the senses and the elements, but ultimately we want to realize ourselves as consciousness. So it's one of those things. I remember when I first started studying Ayurveda, I couldn't understand it. I didn't get it at all. I don't know about you.
Same. Yeah.
I couldn't grasp it, and I took hours, and I was in the end. I said, okay, just next chapter. I couldn't grasp it at all. It's only 5-6 years later, I'm like, oh, I think I start to understand it intellectually.
Yeah. And then,
not even realizing it.
Again, there's different levels of understanding it from there.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, but that's beautiful, right? That, like, when you can come back to it again and be like, oh, like, okay, I've like my mind has changed. I've evolved a bit here. Like,
yes,
getting there.
Yeah, exactly. Expanded in some kind of way.
Yes.
To understand it. So yeah. Well, I hope we're going to have some really interesting discussions on this retreat. I can imagine we're going to have to be like, okay, stop now. This is going to go too deep. Yeah. Well, it'd be lovely to share these things and talk about them as a group.
For sure. Yeah, like work with journaling prompts as well, and to give everyone some space to think about it themselves, and then come together and share perspectives.
Exactly, yeah. And for those that are joining, I'm so excited. Like, I can't wait to see the transformation. I can't wait. Like, at the end, I'm just going to be like, yeah, like, look what's possible.
I think we should do like definitely before and after photos of those who want it, just for them to have.
Yes.
Maybe even a little video of them talking, you know, like to also like reflect on like how they use their voice, how they're speaking, like the energy of the person like in the video. I think that would be so fascinating. Let's remember
we'll
to do
that. We'll do that because we can both talk from experience. You don't know the end because you've not experienced it yet.
Yeah.
But when you do experience it, it'll be like this big awakening of like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that I could feel like this.
Yes. It's beautiful.
And it'll be an emotional moment, I think. It'll be an emotional moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're running out of time. I think this is just going for an hour, right?
Yes, we should. My battery's going to
talk
go
to you
as well,
forever about this. More soon.
we'll plan another live next week, maybe.
Yeah.
And so another juicy topic.
I would
We'll
love
see.
that. Yeah, if there's
We'll see what we can
anyone,
talk about.
if there's any more suggestions, anything you want to know about, share with.
There's a nut cow with a hump, everybody. She's come out. She's come to say hello.
Oh, I want to say hi to him.
Oh, Mother Nature knows that we're talking about you now. Yeah, we're taking them back to you.
Oh, little hump.
Literally, she's just come behind. Like, it's totally Mother. It's Mother Goddess here. She's like, yeah, you're doing it.
India.
Like, I want to come to your Panchakarma retreat. You'll be there with us, no? Oh, you're so calming to like stroke a cow.
Cows are
Anyway,
the
sorry.
best.
Let's not take up too much time. I think she's off now.
Let's not steal her time, shall we?
No. Let's practice a stayer now. Okay. Okay, so until next time then.
Yes.
We'll have another good chat.
Yes.
It's lovely as always, Lee. So thank you so much.
Thank you, love.
All right then. Take care, everyone.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.